Welcome back, my people. We are diving right into the action today with a £359 stack of chips found in my bag from our last session, and about half an hour into this session we get dealt our first premium and significant hand for the vlog with ace king off. In the low jack sits a fairly straightforward player with decent knowledge of the game who raises to a large £15. Action then folds to me on the button, and I'm really tempted to trap for the fact I will be dominating the majority of his range with ace king, and that's exactly what I end up talking myself into doing. I call, now small blind folds, but big blind comes along as well. So we go three ways to a wonderful flop of 4-6 king with two hearts. Interestingly now, big blind donk leads £25. To me this is a little strange. I think either he has a set or is on a flush draw. Then again, wouldn't you check with a set knowing at least low jack or myself will be betting a king a large portion of the time? It's a bit strange. Anyway, low jack calls, and now I think I could raise to thin the field for protection and value against flush draws. Against kings I dominate, so yes, I opt for aggression and raise to £75. Small blind pretty swiftly makes the call, and low jack after a bit of thinking lets his hand go. So heads up to the turn, which is a seemingly blank three of diamonds. Don't think small blind will have 7-5 very often for a straight. Small blind slows down and checks, and now I think he might be on a flush draw. I'm hoping he's on a flush draw, or he has us beat with a set, maybe even two pair, although we do block the king. I don't want to check and let him see the river for free in case he is flushing, and with a sizable pot brewing, I bet £100 for just under half pot, and we get told some pretty bad news.
Ace king. Ace king's losing.
Not exactly what you want to hear right after chucking £100 into the middle. May as well have been chucked into his pocket. That's if he is telling the truth, but this is poker after all. There is some hope. Onto the river, which is the jack of diamonds. He swiftly checks, and although the jack is okay for my range, I haven't been repping king jack in this hand, and besides that, he's read me like a book. I just check back and get shown the surprise of 6-4 off. Yep, he called with 6-4 off pre-flop and got rewarded. Nice hand, which leads me on to the fundamental mistake made in this hand, the mistake of fancy play syndrome and not free betting pre-flop to avoid hands like these seen a cheap flop by players who don't mind a gamble. So try avoid making the same mistake as me, people. On to the next one. I'm still trying to erase that hand from my mind, but now we pick up a close relative in ace jack suited in the small blind. Action folded all the way to the cutoff, who limp calls. This time I do the sensible thing and raise it to £12, and the button cold calls, cutoff folds, and we go two ways out of position. Flop comes down 888. Not too bad. We have backdoor hearts alongside our two overs, including an ace, so I'm simply thinking unless my opponent has a pocket pair or the last 8 in the deck, it's pretty safe to assume I'm ahead. I make a standard C bet of £15 and big blind defends, making the call. Turn comes the king of clubs, a wonderful card for my range. I think I barrel for £35, just over half pot, and that gets the job done as big blind mucks. This might seem like a very boring hand, but I want to highlight I was actually pretty happy with my play here, and if he had a king, he had a king. I can give up if he calls and we don't improve on the river. Over time, I think it's winning small pots like these which will make a big difference to your EV. It wasn't so long ago I would have made the constant blunder of checking both the flop and turn, especially the turn, and so noticing that tiny detail of progress was a positive as I gradually evolve my game towards thinking more in terms of ranges. So I hope something here can be of value for your game too. Moving things along, hijack raises to £15, and we have the TNTs in the cutoff. Here I could raise, but I go for the passive route and just make the call. So I'm just looking to hit a set or see a low flop. And when everyone else folds, we go heads up to a fortunate flop of 3-9 rainbow, a great flop for us. So when hijack leads out for a pretty large size under 25 pounds, I just make the call. Turn now comes the 6 of hearts. Again, a great card which favors my range. Hijack decides to slow down and check. I think he most likely has ace high or a pocket pair now that we could get value from, so I go ahead, bet half pot for 40 pounds and he makes the call. And a pretty good card for us on the river with the ace of diamonds. I don't think either of us have many ace X combos that got this far, so when he slows down and checks it to me now, I don't think he has jacks plus, but at least a pair that I'm pretty sure we beat. So I bet very small, just looking to get a crying call, and after about 30 seconds, he makes the call. We show, he marks, later telling me he had pocket eights. We move.
Pocket tens.
On to picking up ace 9 of spades. Action folds to me in late position. I make the standard raise to £7, small blind calls, and now big blind min raises to 15. For that price, I call small blind calls, taking us 3 ways to 5, 7, 3, 2 clubs. Small blind checks, big blind C bets for 15. Action is on me, and I think big blind will be betting a large portion of his range here, and I have ace high with 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw, so I make the call. Small blind just makes the call as well. Still 3 ways to the turn, which is the jack of diamonds. Both blinds check to me now, and we remain unimproved, and now I decide that this could be a good card to bluff on, as I hold all ace-jack combos as well as other jack-x combos. So I make a £35 punty stab, hoping to take it down, but shortly after I do, small blind 3 bets to 90 and takes it down himself. Looking back at this hand, I think firstly my call on the flop is up for debate. It's very close with small blind yet to act, but more importantly my stab attempt on the turn after being checked to is definitely quite ambitious. I'm actually not really repping anything strong, and at best rep a jack X holding, so definitely vulnerable to being check raised against a lot of the stronger players in the field. But yeah, we move and learn. Alright, on to the biggest hand of the session, people. We are on the big blind with queens, low jack limps, loose aggressive player from the hijack raises to 8, cutoff and button both make the call, and the action is back on us. So with this kind of hand, plus being out of position, I definitely don't want to be going multi-way. I free bet to £50, and now action is on the hijack, who thinks for a bit, reaches for some chips, and 4 bets to £150. Folds back to me, and I have a big decision to make. Firstly, I have around £250 more behind, and secondly, this player has been playing very aggressive, so folding is not an option. Do I go all in, or do I just call? A normal ABC player would have only ace, king, aces, or kings in the hijack, but this player was driving the action quite a bit, therefore I decide to go all in. If we win, we get unstuck, and if we lose, it will be our biggest loss to date. Villain does not snap call, which is great news, but he doesn't take too long before making the call and asking me if I have aces.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
I tell him no, and he tells me then he's ahead with kings. Before preparing for an early showers here, we do agree to run it twice. On the first board, we do not hit, and on the second, it's the same story. I felt it was 50-50 against the normal player, or perhaps leaning more to a fold, but against this opponent, I guess it just was not meant to be. Not too much I can do other than to move on now and improve as always, but yes, this one hurts a bit. Obviously should have raised with ace king. Fancy play syndrome, whatever you call it. And then 5 betting queens. I mean, at best he has ace king, and with flipping could get him to fold ace king. So I don't think that was too bad. Bit of a tough pill to swallow though. Biggest defeat yet. What's up guys, just before we head into today's session, it's 11 p.m. It's a late one, DGen hours, but a quick update, I haven't been in the casino for 2 whole weeks. It's the longest break I've taken from the casino since I started this vlog. The reason being is, in the last session I lost a lot of money and decided I needed a break to focus on my study, to improve before I step foot again in the casino. Just in terms of thinking more like a poker player and thinking in ranges more so than in just my hand strength, and I think that's a big obstacle that many beginners have to overcome. So hopefully I can translate that onto the felt. C-betting a little bit more, free betting to represent a strong hand. We'll see how we get on. Hopefully there is a difference in my play. Let's see. So back in the poker room, after a 2-week break, we buy in for 400 quid, a couple orbits in, we pick up a monster premium. What a beauty. There is an undergun £10 raise, action then folds to me in the cutoff. I free bet to £30, and now the player to my left on the button raises to £50, sitting with only 89 total behind. I of course put him all in. He calls, we flip over our hands, it's kings versus tens, we in good shape here until the flop comes 4, 10, 6.
Come on. Oh, hold. Unlucky, dude. Thanks.
On to the next one, where we pick up Queen 10 suited, which we raised to £9 from early position and go 4 ways to flop in top pair and the flush draw. Checks through, and when the flush comes in on the turn, I delay c-bet for £15, get 2 calls, but after barreling the river as well, both opponents fold and we profit £45 from that one. Now with pocket nines first to act, I raise it up to £8, folds to the hijack who had been playing tight and passive during the session. He free bets to £30. I just make the call and we go heads up to a flop, which comes ace, ace, 7. Okay, not the worst of flops. We have a lot of aces in our range, and if we did hold an ace, I would check here, being out of position to the free better. So I check and hijack makes a quarter size bet of £15, and I just make the call. Turn now brings in a blank deuce of clubs, changes nothing. I check for the same reasons as on the flop. Now hijack checks back, which is interesting. So when the river brings in a blank 5 of diamonds, I feel like our opponent doesn't have an ace and maybe we can fold out a higher pocket pair. Since our opponent is on the tighter side, we might have a chance at taking this down. So I do go for it and bet £55 as a bluff, and our opponent very quickly folds, which is surprising. Ends up claiming he had kings. Wow, that's unlucky if so, but happy to find the bluff on this one, and we move. Shortly following, there is a dealer change, which means a quick game of pot fold, which I get tempted into and lose £80 for transparency. Think from now on we'll try to avoid playing pot fold when trying to play for profit, which is the case in this series, as it's just so high variance and I just have no strategy when it comes to pot fold.
There's no strategy. I have no strategy. There's zero strategy.
Anyway, we move on to picking up ace queen in the hijack, go 3 ways to a king queen 4 board and get check called down for 2 streets of value against ace high in the low jack. Make 40 quid there.
Oh, you got a better ace. That's sick, that's sick.
We get into a spot now with 6-5 of spades when action folds onto me on the button with both the £5 straddle and £10 super straddle on, so I raise to £30 and only the super straddler comes along, who is a loose aggressive player. Flop comes 4 queen 2 with 1 spade. A pretty nice flop for us. We pick up a gut shot, we can rep the queen, and he will just be defending quite wide anyway. So I c-bet quite large for £25, hoping to take it down, but he does make the call. Turn is now pretty good. Brings in the 6 of hearts, giving us some showdown value. So when he checks, I slow down and check back. River is the 10 of hearts. He checks to me again, and with a 6, I think whether I need to bluff. I decide to just check it back again, and we are good. We then play a quick hand with 8-7 of diamonds from +1. I raise to £15, get 2 callers with the straddle on and go 3 ways to an 8 high flop. I just want to take it down, so make a 50% pot bet, mainly for protection, and we do manage to take it down, making 30 quid from that.
Just take it down.
I play a couple more hands, defending a £25 squeeze with ace-jack suited from the big blind, but end up folding to a hefty c-bet on an 8-7-2 board, then losing another £15 calling with queen-jack off on the button when missing the flop, and therefore folding. Decide it's time to call it a night, being okay with the session despite the end result, as ultimately think there are some signs the 2-week break to study the game has helped, but we will see more conclusively in session 3.
The next day.
Back in the poker room, I used the remaining Great British pounds in my bag from last night to buy in for £355 and warm things up, calling with Queen 10 suited from the hijack, going 3 ways in position to a flop of Jack 7-10 with 2 hearts. Action checks to me and I check back for pot control. Turn is another Jack, this time of spades, unfortunately not clubs. +1 bets £5, middle position player folds and I make the call. River is a blank 3 of spades. +1 checks to me and now I think I'm good and have to bet to try get a call from a pocket pair. I bet 20 and he calls and we take this one down. In this next hand, let me just get you caught up real quick. We were in the big blind with 10-9 offsuit. Under the gun limped, button raised to £5 and we go 3 ways to the flop, which comes pretty good. 4, 10, 7, 2 diamonds. First to act, I just want to end the hand and I bet £15, but under the gun to my left has other plans when he raises to £40 with only £33 more behind. At the time I think he could be drawing with a flush or a hand like 8-9 even though I block it, so I put him all in. He snaps and shows pocket 7s. Looking back, I don't like my call here whatsoever. With him being so short stacked, I think he's rarely ever raising me with a draw, and at worst he probably has us outkicked. I then shortly after that lose a small pot with king jack on an ace high board, losing to an ace. Session suddenly goes from bad to worse. My stack has all of a sudden dwindled down to a mere £111 after being in for 353. But it was largely due to a hand I missed the recording of where I lost 70 quid and then followed by running incredibly card dead for the next 1.5 hours where we were very close to leaving and calling it a night, until finally we were met with a reasonable hand to play with again in ace jack off. Action folds to me in the hijack and I raise to £10 and we go 4 ways with the blinds to a flop of ace 5 jack with 2 diamonds.
Finally!
Now blinds check to me, I decide to check because 1, I have pretty good board coverage, but 2, because I expect a loose player on the button to make a bet, which he does to £15. Small blind folds, big blind calls, and now it's time to raise. I do to 50 quid. Button thinks for a bit, asks how much I got behind. I tell him 51, but he eventually passes. However, big blind puts us all in, thank fuck. I call, board runs out, 10 of diamonds, king of spades. I don't feel too good about that run out, but when we show, big blind shows he just had an ace and we take this one down. Come on. Next up, action folds to me on the button. I raise to £5 at the very bottom of my range with 7-6 off and both blinds call. Flop comes 6, queen 10, 2 hearts. Checks to me, I check back for pot control. Turn is to 4 of hearts. Small blind leads for £10 now. Big blind folds and I call with a pair and 1-liner to a flush. River is a pretty good one though in the king of spades. Small blind checks and with this card hitting my range pretty hard, I bluff for £35 and what would you know, small blind makes the fold and we chip up a little here. Not too sure if that was a good range bet, but it worked out. Let me know what you think. We then pick up ace queen of hearts, free bet to £30 out of the big blind, get 1 caller, checks through on the flop and delays c bet on the turn to take it down and profit £33. There.
Show it for the camera.
Show it for the camera, yeah.
Go on.
I mean, I show it to the camera. Then hit 2 pair on the flop with king 10 off, heads up against a loose player and profit £40 there.
What a friendly table, everyone is showing hands.
Now we peel a lovely sight in ace king off. From the cutoff, I raised to £9, small blind calls, under the gun limper calls, taking us 3 ways to 10, 3, 4, 1 heart. Checks to me, I think I could stab here with 2 overs and a backdoor, so I bet 15 and only the small blind calls. Turn is a delightful one, bringing in a lovely ace of clubs, and now small blind leads for £25, which with a 1-liner to a flush out there, to me it just looks like a block bet to see a cheap river with a hand containing a high club or something, and maybe a pair, so I raised to 50, probably could go slightly higher here though. He does make the call, and the river isn't the best, it's the jack of diamonds, and he checks to me, and I think another bet is simply too thin here, so I make the check back, and we are good, as small blind mucks his hand.
I feel like you're drawing. You're not going to call any bets, so I don't think.
Moving along to king 10 off in a limped pot, heads up against the big blind to a flop which comes king queen 8 2 spades. Out of position, I check, big blind stabs for £5, I raise to £15 and he calls. Turn is the 2 of hearts, which is beautifully clean. Now I lead for a pot size bet of 35, putting villain on what is most likely a 1 pair holding that we should beat. Villain does eventually make the call, and the river to complete the board is the jack of hearts. I, for some reason, quickly and instinctively, without much thought, just go ahead and bet big now for a bet of £85. My thinking here is the same as on the turn in terms of what our opponent could have, and I just hope he makes an attempted hero call, and after a whole minute of deliberating, he makes the fold. Looking back, I don't think I mind my play too much there, as long as I'm confident that he doesn't have us beat, and I'm not valuing it myself. I think I must have had a very strong intuition that he'll just have top pair most of the time there, as any 2 pair or better should be raising me on the turn. So anyway, we begin to near the end of our Sunday night session, as it's getting late and we have work the next morning, so we tried to see if there's anything else in store for us, as we have been running very hot late on here, but that ended up being all that session wrote, and we cash out for a nice patient comeback from being £250 down to profiting £66. Definitely one of my proudest sessions to date, as you'll see from my live session reaction. Managed to get unstuck, guys. I think the break has done me good, and playing slightly better, playing my range a little bit more than I am my hand. So I think progress has been made in the last 2 weeks. And yeah, really happy to get unstuck with that one. Was all the way down to about £125 at one point, and managed to get it back up to 421. It's what I've cashed out for, in for 355. Guys, thanks for watching. If you are enjoying the series, enjoying the journey, leave a like, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications down below, and thanks for watching. I'm out. Peace.